When Illicit began to stir again, a heavy sense of grogginess overcame him. At first, the darkness of his lids flashed with traces of crimson and gold, the nightmares he had so many times before now prying into his waking mind. However, much like fog blown away by shifting winds, this too passed. Voices began to sift incoherently at first through his ears, until he could make out the sounds with better comprehension.
I'm impressed, Fane.
The voice of a male was the first Illicit detected, and he made note of the familiarity. Still, the haze was laden in his mind, and before anything coherent could work itself through his drowsy thoughts, another spoke.
Impressed? Impressed by what?
Fane responded tentatively. Once again, the familiarity brushed his thoughts, only aggravating a tired Illicit who was growing impatient with the rate of his awakening. He could only listen, all the while fighting against the pull of his body that urged him to continue to rest.
Well, you somehow managed to heal him without causing him any discomfort,
the male continued, and Fane's expression dropped in aggravation.
Although he isn't exactly conscious to tell us for himself. For all we know, he's emotionally scarred.
Shut it, bird brain!
Fane defended, her eyes narrowing in warning. The argument continued, and Illicit could do little more than listen with irritation.
Bird brain? I thought I said to stop calling me that! Besides, I'm the one with the first-hand experience here. Do you know how many luscious feathers I've lost due to the emotional trauma you've caused me?
Oh, in that case, the next time you put the moves on a male hawk, I'll refrain from fixing your broken wing.
Don't you bring that up again! I told you he had very shiny long feathers. It was an easy mistake.
The more they rambled, the more Illicit's senses began to return. He now remembered the vixen he had encountered earlier. Vibrant, fiery red hues were what stood out most notably, like quick flickers of embers. How she had managed to clear the several feet of distance that separated them without his detection still dumbfounded him, though he tried to chalk this up to his diminished senses. The other in his company also struck him with familiarity. The male's voice was one he had heard from the riverside, the first of many to drown his canals. He did not, however, find him threatening, as his nose was able to detect the unmistakable scent of prey. The wave of ease quickly diminished, however, when the thought of the large black wolf crowded his mind. He reminded Illicit of a varg wolf, or some ungodly creature that was cursed to roam the earth. He could recall the tales his father often told them when they were pups, about the large, crazed creatures that were once wolves, just as they were. In each of his stories, there were themes of greed, anger, and jealousy. Each turned the host towards insanity, leading them astray and breaking their very essence. They were no longer wolves, at least that's what his father had told them. Instead, they were tortured, tormented creatures that had lost all parts of themselves and had succumbed to their desires. Illicit never wanted to believe in such tales, but there was always some irrational fear in the back of his mind that would not allow him to rest with ease. He often kept himself awake at night, pondering the very nature of his existence and what lay in store for him. It was at these times that he imagined himself to be the monster in all of his father's stories, succumbing to the wounds of his past and the darkness that it cast over his ever-wakening eyes. Lovelorn was like a beacon, pulling him out of the shadows and guiding him home. Everything she touched she seemed to make better, and he found himself wondering if he was not too far gone to be saved by her as well.
I am still surprised he brought him back here, though.
The male's voice once more disrupted Illicit's wandering thoughts, and he was aware again of the situation he was in.
It is unusual, but we should trust his intentions.
It's not that I don't trust him, Fane, but you can't say you aren't the least bit curious as to what's going on here.
Well, I guess.
Shut up! Illicit managed to spit through clenched jaws. He had grown tired of their constant chatter, and his patience had long since been extinguished. Silence quickly followed Illicit's demand, as the two looked on at his knitted expression. It took him several moments longer to pry his eyes open, though once he had managed this, he was greeted with two pairs of inquisitive eyes. The first were the emerald slits of the fox, of whom tipped her head apprehensively. The others were the onyx beaded eyes of a crow. Illicit looked between the two of them, at first with confusion, followed by an onslaught of aggravation.
You're awake!
The fox began, wrapping the width of her tail around her slender paws.
Clearly. He looks awful mad, too.
The crow chirped in response.
You can't blame him.
Do you two ever shut up? Illicit growled, dismissing any act of gratitude or hospitality.
Well, someone woke up on the wrong side of the den,
the crow replied sarcastically, which earned another growl from Illicit's snout. He attempted to sit up, and after a few feeble attempts managed to succeed. He sat with both legs to his side like a pup that lacked social etiquette. Those in his company said nothing as they watched, though it was apparent they found his mannerisms amusing. "Where the hell am I?"
You're safe, if that's what you're concerned about.
The crow mused, and Illicit glared in response. "Oh, yeah. Last time I checked, crows were a real savage bunch."
You have quite a mouth on you know that?
"You got a problem with it, Beaky?"
Maybe I do.
A hiss escaped Fane's lips now, her brow furrowing in annoyance.
Will you both stop it already? This is no way to start off introductions.
"Yeah?" Illicit's response was nothing if sarcastic. "And who the hell are you?" Fane sighed, shaking her head disapprovingly.
You really have no manners, huh, pup?
"Pup? Who are you calling pup?" Illicit rose now, the tuft of his neck starting to stand in annoyance. The narrow of his eyes was further proof of this, along with the stiffness of his muscles. "Those are pretty strong words coming from prey."
Watch your tongue, pup.
Fane spat, her patience fading.
One can only tolerate so much disrespect. I suggest you realize what it is we've done for you and be grateful for it.
Illicit opened his mouth to retort, only to hesitate when presented with this revelation. He grumbled abruptly, shutting his muzzle, but still fuming over his loss. It wasn't that he wasn't grateful, but the fact that he needed saving in general caused him fatigue. He wasn't a damsel, he didn't need saving, but he sure as hell was distressed.
Anyway,
Fane began, deciding to stray away from any further arguments.
how are you feeling? Any pain?
"I'm fine," Illicit managed to mutter through a clenched muzzle, avoiding the emerald hues of the fox who looked on questioningly.
Really?
The crow chirped, his tone laced with disbelief.
Because you look like hell.
This earned another sharp glare from Illicit, and Fane quickly interjected.
Strix, don't be so rude.
She scolded, her tone as stern as her expression.
What? It's true. I was only making an observation.
You were being rude. Now quiet down, bird brain.
Strix ruffled his feathers, the insult not boding well with him. Despite his anger, Illicit finally looked himself over after the insult. His once white fur was now matted and soiled, and he couldn't remember the last time he had looked so disheveled. If only Lovelorn could see him now. And then it hit him. Lovelorn. He stood, albeit too quickly, his legs trembling beneath the weight of his body.
What are you doing?
Fane asked frantically.
You aren't well enough to walk around yet.
Illicit merely ignored her word of caution, narrowing his eyes when they fell upon his trembling muscles, and demanded them to steady themselves. He took a step forward, tensing when his muscles felt as though they would cave beneath him.
Seriously?
Fane started again, on the tips of her toes with anxiety.
You're going to injure yourself.
Illicit responded by taking another step forward, followed by another. Fane was on the verge of attempting to physically stop him before Strix held out a wing to stall her.
If he wants to go, Fane, just let him go. It's not worth it.
You know he won't be happy when he finds out, Strix.
At this he buttoned his beak, knowing all too well how that discovery would play out.
Look, just take it easy for a bit, okay? A few more minutes wouldn't hurt.
Fane tried rationalizing with Illicit with no success. Illicit was never one to be rational. He was far too stubborn. He knew he was pushing his limits, but he couldn't seem to talk himself down. His mind ran rampant with thoughts of his family, thoughts of Lovelorn, and he couldn't shake the pull he was feeling to find her. He didn't know how long he had been asleep, or how he even managed to survive the rage that the river threw at him. But that didn't matter to him at the moment. With her in mind, he took a few more steps forward, brushing past the fox who looked on worriedly.
Don't be stupid,
She began to call out just as Illicit had forced himself into a jog. How he had managed the action was baffling, but the lack of comprehension did not stop his paws from moving. A wave of pain hit him just as he neared the mouth of the den, and his eyes shut instinctively. His pace, however, did not slow until he found himself crashing face first into a solid object, the impact knocking him down to his rear. A thud was heard as he made contact with the ground, and a growl escaped his lips at the throbbing of his nose.
Fuck,
He grumbled, using a paw to rub his tender snout.
going somewhere, pup.
The deep voice startled him, and his eyes finally opened to see the object he had run into. There, in all his grandeur, was the black beast. His eyes gazed down at Illicit, who was now aware of just how daunting his size had really been. He was once again filled with unease, and did not bother to hide the distrust that flashed across his features. At this, the black wolf took a step back before speaking again.
You aren't well enough to go barreling out through the forest.
I'm sorry, sir.
Fane began apologetically.
I tried to reason with him, but he wouldn't simmer down.
It's all right, Fane. I'm sure our guest has his reasons to rush.
He turned his attention back to the young wolf who still sat before him.
So, you're heading out already?
Another grumble left Illicit's muzzle, and his eyes narrowed. I was, until a big-ass bear knocked me on my ass. He spat sarcastically, to which he noticed the beast's eyes glint in amusement.
Bear, huh? Can't say I haven't heard that one before.
he announced half-heartedly before tipping his head.
Where are you headed?
A place called None of Your Fucking Business. You ever been there? It's nice.
Hey!
Strix finally spoke up, his feathers ruffled.
Don't speak that way to him, pup. You're lucky he didn't leave you for dead.
There was a moment of silence as Illicit pondered this fact. It made little sense to him why he chose to intervene with nature's work. He couldn't help but question his motives.
Yeah? So why did you save me anyway?
He asked, suspension easily detected in his tone. The beast only smirked.
We all have reasons for doing things. It's all a part of your journey.
Journey, Illicit muttered, finding the answer too vague for his liking. What the hell are you talking about? What journey?
You have no clue, do you?
Clue about what? Will you stop being so damn cryptic and tell me what the hell is going on? Fane audibly sighed at his comment, disappointed in his mannerisms.
In due time. For now, you need rest.
Fuck that. Illicit spat, his patience thinning. I don't have time for these shitty mind games. If that's all you're gonna tell me, I'm out of here. Illicit rose to his paws once more, another wave of pain crashing over his limbs, which he ignored. Instead, he moved around the large black wolf, watching him through his peripherals.
I just thought.
The beast spoke, just as Illicit reached the opening of the den.
You'd like to know about who you are and where you came from.
Illicit's pause came to an abrupt halt, his body stiffening as he peered out over the vast expanse of the woodlands.